All the time. Girls as young as 12 or 13 are thrust into motherhood. It's a harsh reality for anyone to face. You'd never imagine that some black female stars under the spotlight had that same rough start. They became mothers before they'd even left middle school, while their friends were still playing with Barbie castles, losing themselves in books, or dreaming of carefree fun. These future celebrities were already cradling tiny newborns in their arms, bearing the immense burden of adulthood, a mother while still a child herself. What was that even like? How did they endure the pressure, the judgment, and a choice they could never undo? The stories I'm about to share will guide you through the journeys of 11 famous black women who became mothers incredibly young. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear isn't pretty. 11. Ada Ai, the 14-year-old mother from the slums of Ajagunle. Ada Ai was a beloved comedic star in Nollywood. She was known for her natural charm and her talent for finding humor in hardship. Ada Ame's story began in the crowded barracks of Ajagunle, Lagos. Imagine rows of rundown houses, packed tightly together, with endless noise and poverty as a constant companion. Her childhood was spent working odd jobs under a blazing sun, eating makeshift meals in a place where showing weakness wasn't an option. Back in March 1987, at a tender age, Ada was navigating the same social pressures that many teens do. The girls she knew often spoke of relationships as a milestone of maturity. Wanting to fit in, Ada got involved with an older naval officer, completely unaware of the difficult path that lay ahead. The pregnancy happened quickly, but went unnoticed. Between her tough life and constant hunger, Ada barely registered the changes in her body. By the time her family realized she was pregnant, she was already 5 months along, sending her into a state of panic. They found the father, only to learn he had died in the line of duty. In December of 1987, days before her 15th birthday, she delivered her daughter in a busy public hospital. The labor was agonizing, dragging on for what felt like an eternity, tearing her apart physically and mentally. Her family offered little support. They saw her pregnancy at 14 as a deep source of shame. And it got worse. Once her parents knew the truth, they fought constantly, blaming each other until their marriage fell apart. Ada went to live with her father, who verbally abused her every day. When the baby was 5 months old, his fury peaked. He threw Ada and her daughter out, leaving them homeless and alone. A young teenage girl, with a fragile life to shield, she had to learn how to make it completely alone. Ada confessed to being a child, raising another, a thought that haunted her for years. By day, she took any menial job available just to put food on the table for her daughter. At night, as the city slept, silent tears of shame would stream down her face, fueled by fear and a crushing sense of abandonment by the world. School was a distant memory, replaced by judging stares and venomous whispers. Life's relentless grind left her feeling increasingly alone. At her absolute lowest, Ada sought refuge from her pain in alcohol and drugs. Yet, a powerful maternal instinct always pulled her back from the brink. Her daughter, Aladi, became her sole anchor and reason to endure. Each day felt like she was hauling an impossible weight on her back. But by 28, Ada began to carve a new path through acting, first in minor roles, then on television, channeling the harsh memories of a young mother broken by circumstance. The laughter she brought to the screen was forged in her own past suffering. That raw authenticity is what captivated her audience. Ada Ame became a star, celebrated not just for her comedy, but for the resilience behind it. But fate wasn't finished testing this woman's strength. In 2020, a devastating blow struck when Aladi Dak, her only child, died at 32 following a botched liver operation. The loss shattered the defenses Ada had built around her heart. The grief was unbearable. She was utterly broken. Just 2 years later, Ada Ame also departed this world. From a 14-year-old enduring the pain of childbirth to a celebrated television icon, Ada's life story is a sobering tale that silences people, making them ponder the heavy price of a childhood stolen too soon. It highlights the incredible strength of a mother who was, in truth, still a child herself. 10. Cherie Whitfield, who became a mother at 15 amid harsh judgment before rising to reality TV fame. In the world of American reality television, Cherie Whitfield is a well-known figure. She's known for being sharp and unapologetically bold on her show. On screen, she projects an unbreakable confidence and an almost frosty demeanor, with a will that seems impossible to bend. But few realize that back in 1985, at only 15, Cherie became pregnant with her daughter, Tiara. At an age when peers fretted over school and social circles, Cherie was caught in a reckless teen romance. Too young to understand the immense weight of motherhood, her body changed with each passing day of the pregnancy. Anxiety tightened its grip as her thoughts descended into chaos. When she arrived at the hospital for delivery, Cherie was still just a kid herself. The physical agony of labor was amplified by sheer terror, as she was too young to grasp her new role. After giving birth, she received cold glares instead of compassion. Family and friends passed harsh judgment. Many believed her life was effectively ruined from that moment on. Her own parents refused to help care for her or the newborn. In a rundown rental, Cherie raised Tiara completely on her own, juggling school with odd jobs to afford milk and diapers. The nights were endless, filled with a baby's cries while the 15-year-old mother, with sunken eyes, barely slept. Society's judgment of young mothers felt crushing. Cherie's world grew smaller, her spirit faltering at times. She sank into a quiet depression, a secret she kept locked away. Admitting she felt broken seemed impossible. Each day was a silent war between duty and the ghost of a lost youth. Yet, somewhere in the chaos, a change began. Cherie learned to forge her pain into strength. She poured all her hope into raising Tiara. Old struggles lingered, but her will began to harden. She knew if she fell, her daughter would fall too. 8 years later, Cherie married Bob Whitfield, having 2 more children. His infidelity ended the marriage, and her solo journey continued. More challenges brought greater wisdom. Tiara was raised with disciplined affection. She grew into a strong woman, echoing her mother's resilience. When Cherie joined the cast of a reality show, viewers met a confident, sharp woman who never backed down. Few saw the shadow of a teen mom society had cast aside. That difficult past was the source of her toughness. It made her unbreakable against public opinion or private storms. Number 9. Cathy Hughes, the 16-year-old outcast who built the Radio 1 empire. Cathy Hughes is a powerhouse media entrepreneur, the first black woman to lead a public U.S. company. She's a symbol of pure grit. Cathy grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. During 1963 to 1964, the city was deeply conservative, and Cathy became pregnant at 16. The news drew cruel stares and judgment. Friends turned their backs on her. People assumed her future was destroyed. What do you think? The deepest cut came from her own family. Her mother, overwhelmed with anger, kicked Cathy out of their home. A teenage girl, still learning about life, was forced into the world pregnant, with no support and no plan. Only fear and a new, heavy responsibility filled her days on unfamiliar streets. On January 30th, 1965, Alfred Liggins III was born. Shortly after Cathy's 17th birthday, welcoming her son also meant facing an overwhelming burden. Looking at the infant in her arms, a child herself, she knew there was no time for confusion. She had to act immediately, taking her son to her job at a radio station. Her mornings were a frantic rush. Baby in one arm, tasks in the other. Sometimes Cathy had to push past her embarrassment, breastfeeding at her desk while sorting through paperwork. Nights were filled with her baby's cries as she anxiously budgeted every dollar. Money was impossibly tight. She faced choices between buying formula and paying the rent. Sleepless nights and sheer exhaustion pulled her toward despair. Cathy often considered an easier life, sometimes even thinking of ending it all. But one look at her sleeping son always pushed those dark thoughts away. He was both her anchor and her engine, keeping her from drifting away or breaking down. Cathy threw herself into her work with relentless energy. Starting as a regular employee, she seized every small chance to learn and grow. But her path was anything but smooth. Racism, sexism, and single motherhood weighed on her. Yet she transformed that pressure into power. From scratch, she painstakingly built Radio 1. Alfred essentially grew up in the office. Accustomed to the constant hustle, a struggling mother amid paper stacks slowly became a powerful female executive. When Radio 1 ascended and was listed on the U.S. stock market, Cathy Hughes etched her name into history. The young woman once cast out for being pregnant at 16 rose to become a media mogul. Her success, however, was born from hardship, a story where a baby's wails echoed against a society full of obstacles. Even so, Cathy's life proves that early single motherhood is not the end. It was a harrowing start, but it also forged an unbreakable will that propelled her beyond poverty, prejudice, and loneliness to create an empire that commanded national respect. 8. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, became a mother at 12 and again at 14. Aretha Franklin was a musical titan, the Queen of Soul, a voice that carried historical significance. She sculpted the very soul of American music, leaving a legacy beyond any chart performance. But Aretha's journey didn't begin gently. In 1954, Detroit, at just 12, she became pregnant. Her community, particularly the rigid church environment led by her father, offered no compassion for her situation. Her world became incredibly stifling. On January 28, 1955, Aretha delivered her first son, Clarence Franklin, just 2 months before she turned 13. In a hospital heavy with disinfectant, the agony of childbirth tore through her young body. But the pain was more than physical. It wounded the spirit of a child forced into motherhood before understanding her own world. The father was a man named Edward Jordan Sr., a much older man with a silver tongue. It was a name Aretha rarely spoke, a memory she seemed to want to bury. Before her body could recover from that trauma, she faced another life-altering event. In 1957, at just 14 years old, she gave birth to a second son, Edward Franklin. On January 22nd, 2 babies, 2 births. While still a child herself, both Clarence and Edward took the Franklin surname, and the burden of their care fell entirely upon her. Her life then was a constant, grueling cycle between being a mother and chasing a musical dream. Aretha launched her career while raising her young children. Her performances weren't just bright lights. They were accompanied by crying babies backstage. She frequently prepared for shows while juggling her children and their needs. This reality was a world away from the typical image of a rising star. Yet, this was her life. A world steeped in constant judgment. The community's gaze was unforgiving. Her early motherhood was a shameful secret the family had to keep. Aretha learned to be silent, burying her feelings while her body was still a child's. Her mind was strained. With no emotional support at home, this immense pressure boxed a young girl in. But in that darkness, music was her escape. Her voice was more than just a gift. It held the heaviness of suppressed anguish and hurt, and a desperate need to truly exist. Each note was a confession her words could not form. Perhaps becoming a mother so young, and bearing that immense weight, gave her voice its unique power. Soon, Aretha commanded major venues as her fame and success grew rapidly. Yet her past was an unshakable shadow. She was crowned the Queen of Soul, a voice that could stop the world. But beyond the stage, her motherhood at 12 and 14 remained a deep regret, a price for rushing her youth. 7. Oprah Winfrey was a 14-year-old mother who lost her premature baby just weeks after birth. Oprah is a worldwide media powerhouse, the undisputed queen of American television, the woman who built a dynasty from nothing to become a cultural titan. In 1968, at only 14, Oprah found herself pregnant. This wasn't teenage romance. It stemmed from extended trauma. She concealed the pregnancy for 7 months, wrapping her stomach daily. She feared expulsion, judgment, and being labeled. She withdrew, using baggy clothes to obscure her changing shape. But her body's transformation was undeniable. Her feet and ankles swelled, making it hard to walk. Concealment was futile. The constant binding for 7 months led to intense pain, forcing a hospital visit. At last, her secret was exposed. Judgmental stares and accusations pushed her into a state of panic. The shock induced early labor. Her son was born fragile, needing an incubator. She named him Canaan, symbolizing a new life and a promised land. It was a fragile hope against terrible odds. But a miracle never arrived. Her baby survived just a few weeks in the hospital before he passed away, leaving a painful void for a girl who was hardly a mother herself. Grief, shame, and guilt plunged her into despair. At her lowest point, her mind sank so low she considered ending her life with drain cleaner. Her world became a blur, and she felt she was a burden to everyone. Her father, however, framed the tragedy as a second chance. Though harsh, this became her life's turning point. The pain forged a new direction. She poured all her energy into her studies, seeking an escape from the cycle of poverty and abuse. The loss was a constant reminder of what would happen if she gave up, that her life would remain trapped in darkness. Later, she slowly entered the media world. From radio to local TV, she rose to become a central figure in American culture. On screen, viewers saw a resilient figure who preached healing and overcoming adversity. Behind her public success lay a story of deep, early sorrow. 6. Iyanla Vanzant, a teenage mother navigating poverty and violence to forge a new path. She's now a renowned speaker, lawyer, and influential author. Her life's work is dedicated to healing and confronting trauma, especially helping Black American communities rise from despair. Iyanla's childhood in Brooklyn, New York was fragmented and unstable. Losing her mother at 2, Iyanla was shuttled between relatives, never staying long. Her youth was a harsh landscape of poverty and violence, and abuse that left deep scars on her young soul. In 1969, just 16, she found herself pregnant and unmarried. Her child was born into a world offering no money, support, or protection. Her pregnancy made her a target for the community's harsh judgment. She faced public scorn, with no one acknowledging the abuse she endured. Iyanla delivered her first son, Damon, in an overcrowded public hospital. Her labor was a grueling ordeal lasting 2 days and nights. Alone and exhausted, she left with a baby and the crushing weight of her new life. In that instant, she realized her teenage years were over. Motherhood became a necessity for survival. 3 years on, at 19, she married, but the marriage brought no peace, only deepening her struggles. By 21, she had 2 more children, one of them, her daughter, Gemma. The family crammed into public housing, surviving on government assistance. Finances were a constant struggle. Domestic abuse and financial strain slowly crushed her will to live. Trapped in this cycle, she succumbed to severe postpartum depression. Her exhaustion was so profound, day and night began to blur. She made several desperate attempts to end her own suffering. This led to long stays in psychiatric wards, isolated but finding no relief. Upon her release, her husband was gone, taking one of their 2 children. Iyanla went home to a shabby apartment with her remaining 2 children, broke and spiritless. Her days became a fight for survival. Cleaning and selling, she took any job to feed her 2 kids and keep a roof over their heads. Her nights were spent in quiet tears, feeling like a complete failure. Poverty wasn't her greatest fear. She dreaded seeing her children relive her own painful journey. That fear became her fuel. She returned to her studies, determined despite the struggle. She first earned a college degree, then another in law. Each achievement was forged through exhaustion and relentless work. From the depths of her despair, Iyanla began to articulate her pain. She spoke of healing from her own indelible scars, and her message resonated. She became a speaker, a guide, working with Oprah and sharing her story of confronting darkness with millions. Yet, behind the spotlight, the memories of her early motherhood lingered. Poverty, violence, to loss, and deep despair, and the fear her children might suffer the same. Iyanla embraces her past. Each fragment of her past now gives her message undeniable power. Her journey proves that while healing is hard, it is truly possible. 5. Toya Johnson, a 15-year-old mother, caught between young love and the pressures of adulthood. Toya Johnson is a familiar name on American reality television. A best-selling author and fashion entrepreneur, she carved out her own success. She built her career without riding on anyone else's fame. She made her own name, becoming a symbol of financial freedom for young mothers. Toya's journey into motherhood began in New Orleans. Around 14 or 15, Toya began a young romance with Lil Wayne, who was barely older. 2 kids with dreams of music, fame, and freedom. Then, an unexpected pregnancy changed everything. The news ripped them from their carefree youth, thrusting them into parenthood, a role even adults find daunting. In 1998, Regina Carter arrived on November 29th. Toya, just turned 15, felt her mind race, exhausted in a hospital bed after a perilous birth that almost took her life. Her childhood felt like a distant memory. With no preparation or experience, she felt only confusion and immense responsibility. After giving birth, Toya faced the relentless cycle of single motherhood alone. She had to move back home with her parents, her crying infant making their small home feel even more crowded. Regina was frequently ill. Sleepless nights spent feeding left Toya exhausted. She would hold her daughter, rocking her, and silently weep from sheer frustration. Her first thought each morning was of milk and diapers, not melodies. The label of teen mom also came with constant scrutiny. Whispers and stares followed her, with many saying she had thrown her future away. In that New Orleans apartment, Toya would rock her child, wondering if they were right. But even in that turmoil, Toya refused to be defeated. She focused on becoming self-sufficient, instead of relying on her husband's support. She meticulously jotted down ideas, sketching out plans while her baby slept. She authored books, sharing her experiences, and ventured into fashion, opened stores, and joined reality TV. Figuring it all out alone, Regina grew from her mother's embrace into a confident woman with her own unique talents. Seeing her daughter blossom, Toya realized all those sleepless nights, the meager meals, and the private tears, all had a purpose. Toya Johnson's story is no fairy tale. It is a clash of youth and responsibility, of aspiration and stark reality. From a teenage single mother facing poverty, she became an independent woman with a career and a powerful voice. 4. Fantasia Barrino. A 16-year-old mother who gave birth in the midst of poverty, Fantasia Barrino possesses one of America's most iconic voices. As the winner of American Idol Season 3, she is a symbol of resilience for women of color, channeling pain into strength and using music as her deliverance on stage. But Fantasia's own youth was far from peaceful. Growing up in deep poverty in High Point, North Carolina, opportunities were as limited as the cramped space she lived in. While her peers had dreams of the spotlight, Fantasia confronted a much harsher existence. In 2000, at only 16, her teenage frame underwent a radical transformation. Pregnancy felt like hauling a boulder inside her. On August 8, 2001, her baby girl, Zion Quarry Barrino, was delivered at a local hospital. Fantasia was barely 17, a kid in most people's eyes, yet she was already a mom. Labor became an emergency C-section when the baby was in a breech position. She faced immense physical pain alongside terror for an unknown future. She worried about nurturing a new life when she could hardly manage her own. After the birth, Fantasia was thrust into single motherhood as the father vanished. She returned to her parents' house, adding a newborn's cries to the already crowded space. Zion was often sick at night, and the sleepless feedings left Fantasia drained. She would rock her baby and silently weep for a youth lost to hardship. Her first thoughts each morning were of formula and funds, not music. The stigma against young black mothers was crushing. Fantasia was met with ridicule, judging stares, and constant whispers. The social shunning made her withdraw. She took any job she could for formula and clothes, counting every dollar. Music was no longer a passion. It became her means of survival. Fantasia sang whenever possible, just to get by. Perhaps those first years of motherhood, the sleepless nights, and the constant stress infused her voice with raw emotion. Each performance channeled her exhaustion into the will to continue. Then, in 2004, her life turned around. Winning Season 3 of American Idol was more than a title. It was her escape route from poverty. She went from that cramped home to huge stages, lit up for the world to see. The prize money brought stability, allowing her to provide for Zion. And for once, she experienced a security that had always been out of reach. Reflecting on Fantasia's story as a 16-year-old mother, you have to admire how she raised a child while navigating a society unforgiving of anything different. It's possible that without Zion, Fantasia might have lacked the fierce motivation to pursue her music. Maybe the fear of her daughter facing a similar fate drove her harder. From a teen mom in poverty, she transformed into an icon of perseverance. It proved that early trials don't always crush a person. They can force accelerated growth. 3. Clarion Chukwura. She became pregnant at 17 on a film set, raising her son alone to be a renowned director. Clarion Chukwura is a titan of Nigerian cinema, a woman who persevered for decades to become a rare, outspoken and famous entertainment icon. Clarion's youth in Lagos was deeply connected to the film scene, with early roles thrusting her into the limelight. But as her career gained momentum and her name grew, her life took a sharp turn. At only 17 years old, Clarion became pregnant. Back then, Nigerian society was far less forgiving. A young, unmarried actress was about to have a child, with the father's identity a secret. The gossip spread like a plague. Her pregnancy progressed amidst a demanding filming schedule. Her body was transforming. Yet Clarion endured over 12 hours a day on camera, hiding her exhaustion with heavy makeup and her bump with loose clothing. Dizziness would strike mid-take, sweat pooling on the back of her neck. She'd waver but never fall, feeling the director's intense gaze on her. She knew any weakness could cost her every opportunity. Finding out at 1 month, she agonized over keeping the baby. Her career was taking off, her future finally clear. Fearing rejection, Clarion nearly chose to end the pregnancy, but the child felt like the return of her father, lost so young. On December 20th, 1983, her son Clarence was born in Lagos. At the baby's first cry, Clarion felt joy through her exhaustion. But reality struck even harder. Their clashing lifestyles shattered her relationship with the father. He wanted no part of marriage or responsibility and fled the country. Clarion was left to raise her son completely alone. Days were spent on set, nights in a silent room with a crying baby. She often had no choice but to bring him with her to shoots. All the while, the social pressure was relentless, and rumors swirled. Some admired her grit, while others scorned her personal choices. She had to maintain her public image while protecting her son. There were days she felt so overwhelmed she wanted to vanish. But her son's smile gave her the strength to continue her on-screen role. Clarence grew up on film sets, surrounded by artists and backstage life. He became accustomed to the bright lights from a young age. Clarion watched him, constantly worried he'd be trapped in the same difficult life. That anxiety fueled her relentless work ethic. She built her career so her son would never know hardship or shame. Clarion didn't just survive, she became a Nollywood icon. Clarence Peters emerged as a renowned director with a unique vision. 2. Shan George, a 16-year-old mother, divorced and raising kids under Nigeria's stigma. Shan George is a veteran Nollywood actress, singer, and producer. She has been a fixture in West African entertainment, a true symbol of resilience and power. Born in Cross River State to Igbo and English parents, Shan George was raised in a very traditional society. At just 16, a youthful impulse led to an arranged marriage in 1986. Pregnancy soon followed, clouding any clear view of her future. At 2 a.m. on November 23, 1986, her first son was born. The teenage marriage, however, quickly fell apart. With no money and little support from her husband, she faced it all alone. The stigma of 1980s Nigerian society was harsh and unforgiving. Shan was cruelly judged and called awful names, dismissed as a wayward girl. Even by her own mother's family, Shan had to navigate motherhood while still a teenager herself. Shan soon had a second son, and then a third. 3 babies in 3 years with an irresponsible husband. Their cramped rental became a nightly war zone. Cries and sighs filled the air. The marriage quickly dissolved. Shan became a young single mom, carrying the family's weight. She juggled music gigs and acting auditions, breaking into the tough Nollywood scene. Early films paid little but offered hope. On set, she learned lines while rocking her child to sleep. After filming, she would rush home to the grind of meals and rent. She often wept in private. Her youth lost to responsibility. Dreams of a carefree 16 were replaced by a hard-won toughness. Still, Shan never abandoned her art. She built her career slowly, role by role, her name becoming known. Once a judged young girl, she became a familiar face in Nigeria, first on screen, and later as a film producer. Her children grew up with little money but great spirit, which drove them to aim high. Shan looked on with pride at her grown children, who were her greatest support. Now, Shan George is a grandmother. She traded her youth and early peace for an incredible strength. Shan George's life proves that a young mother, even when backed into a corner, can rise up and make an indelible mark. Take Liz Benson, for example. She became a mother at 17, then a widow raising 3 kids alone. Liz Benson was a Nollywood icon of the 1990s, known for her captivating roles. Few knew her reign as a screen queen began with teenage motherhood, a path that started early and was filled with sorrow. Born in Etinan, Akwa Ibom State, Liz was raised within a deeply traditional Nigerian culture. Around 1983, at just 17, she innocently entered an arranged marriage. Pregnancy followed just months later, completely upending her life. Barely a woman herself, Liz had to prepare to become a mother. When she went into labor, she was exhausted and terrified for the future. Her first child brought both joy and a heavy burden to her young shoulders. Before long, she was pregnant again and delivered her second child. 3 children arrived in quick succession, while she was still a youth herself. The marriage that promised support soon became an ordeal. When Liz was just past 20, her husband, Samuel Gabriel Atim, died suddenly from an illness. She instantly became a widow, solely responsible for 3 young children. The years that followed were her darkest. She spent her nights rocking her crying babies to sleep. Her days were spent on film sets, a forced smile hiding her exhaustion. Behind that smile was constant worry about school fees, daily expenses, and what the future held. Some pitied the young widow, others kept their distance. Liz ignored the gossip and threw herself into her work. She took every part she could, filming constantly through the 1990s. Her hard work paid off, making Liz Benson a household name in Nollywood. The title Queen of the Screen was a well-earned reward for her struggles. On set, Liz remained a devoted mother, bringing her kids along and fostering their independence. Liz had to be both mother and father, serving as the sole pillar of support for her children. Every role secured another month of tuition and put food on the table. Yet, at her peak, she felt an inner emptiness. The weight of past losses had left deep scars. She started to retreat from the spotlight, finding healing in her faith. In 2009, Liz remarried, tying the knot with Bishop Great Amaya, closing a turbulent chapter for the young widow who had carried her family alone. Before this video ends, pause and think. If you were in her position, what would you have done when life took such an unexpected turn? This isn't just a question for women. Men share responsibility in these narratives. Of the 11 stories we've shared, whose journey was the most surprising to you, and which one touched your heart the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments to share with us. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and enable notifications to support our channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.